Hey, high school students, this is Jeremiah, the student pastor here at Gateway, and I'm excited to dig into the final week of our series called Like Me, all about comparison with you. I know this is a little bit different. We're on YouTube tonight, and you're going to be on Zoom or Google Hangouts or small group, but we will be back together before you know it, okay? And so let's dig right into what God has for us tonight. Join me for a word of prayer. God, thank you so much for this opportunity to dig into your word, and I pray in the name of Jesus that you help us to glean from it what you have for each and every one of us tonight that's listening, Father, and that our small group conversations would be fruitful, and that we would take the steps you put in front of us to take, and that we'd have the courage to begin seeing ourselves in a completely new light, that we might be transformed, not only inwardly but outwardly, in how we see ourselves and how we see others. In Jesus' name, amen. So we've been talking about comparison, right? In week one, we kind of established that comparison living keeps us from seeing our true worth. That comparison living is not God's design for the way that we should live, because it keeps us from seeing who He's created us to be. And can keep us from doing the things He called us to do, because we just don't see the value in ourselves in that way. And also, comparison living leads you to try to live like somebody else rather than like you. So from the get-go, we see comparison living is flawed and not God's design for us. And then last week, we looked at the story of King Saul and David and the dynamic of their relationship, specifically Saul, and how jealousy, which is rooted in comparison, rotted him from the inside out. We see his slow fade in the Old Testament as we lose Saul. In the same way, we said that comparison living keeps us from liking others, right? Saul had this incredible opportunity to celebrate David, but he missed it because he was so focused on what David had that he did, and he was jealous. In the same way, we can miss out on celebrating what others have and what we have whenever we focus so much on what we don't have that other people have, and it makes us jealous. And not only do we miss out on celebrating those people, but it really does affect us. It affects how happy we are with our life, and it affects how much we like ourselves. So tonight we're going to talk about how comparison living and finality can keep me from liking me. Not only liking the life that we have, the things that we have, but just liking who we are, right? So I wanted to start with a story. Some of you may know this, but I didn't start out dating Kendra in high school. We grew up in the same little town together in southern Illinois called Newton, but we didn't start dating until right after high school graduation. This means that it wasn't, at least for me, you can ask her and get her version of the story, but for me, it wasn't like okay, we've graduated, now I'm interested in you. I was interested in her for a really long time. I can remember freshman year, 8th grade year, when I first met her, I thought she was beautiful. I was a little 13-year-old boy, and I was like, man, she's really pretty. And then in high school, thinking about ways, okay, how can I be her friend, all this kind of stuff. But for me, I felt like she didn't notice me. And again, you can talk to her, get her side of the story, but I just felt like, okay, she's not interested in what I bring to the table. And so what I did try to notice is what qualities do the guys possess that do seem to capture her attention. What are those qualities that they have? And I noticed things like they're funny, they're popular, maybe some of them are taller than me. And whether these are true or not, these are the things that I pinpointed. Mostly it was things that I didn't have. Right? I didn't see myself as super funny, or the most popular guy, or really tall, obviously. And so I tried to pinpoint those things and figure out, okay, how can I be better at those things? How can I be funnier? How can I be taller? I don't know, wear thicker shoes, right? How can I gain the right friends? How can I be more confident? How can I be better so that she will like me? Because if only I were funnier, taller, maybe I had a car, more confident, maybe I was smarter. She was always super smart, hung out with some really intelligent people. Maybe if I was those things, Kendra would like me. Have you ever felt like that, or had been interested in someone, and you felt like if only I were this, fill in the blank for you, maybe that person would like me, right? What will be enough for them to like me? maybe I guarantee that I'm not the only one that's ever felt this way. I guarantee some of you sitting there listening and watching this video, this stream right now, can relate to that. Maybe you're feeling that way right now. If only I were this person would like me more. Maybe it is someone of the opposite sex, but it also leaks into other areas of our life. Like some of you are really great actors and actresses or thespians, or you're good at musicals. And maybe you think, if only I were a better singer or a better actor or had the right part or in the right place at the right time, my theater director would like me more. My theater director would approve of me more, would think more of me if only I were this. Or maybe for some of you, it's only I were the best player on the lacrosse field or the football field or the basketball court or in the swimming pool, whatever it is. If only I were that, maybe the coach would like me more, put me in more, would approve of me more. Maybe it's in the classroom for some of you. Maybe you think, if only I had the best grades in the classroom, or at least better than I do, the teacher would like me more, would smile at me more, would be more friendly towards me like she is or he is towards some of the other students. If only, maybe for some of you it's a little more serious. Not that those things aren't serious, but this is a little more closer to home, literally and metaphorically. Maybe for some of you it's if only I were to make less dumb decisions. Quote unquote dumb, right? My parents would like me more. My parents would approve of me more. My parents would look at me the way they do my brother or sister. Whether that's true or not, some of us feel that way. For some of you, maybe it's your friends. If only I were able to keep up with things better. If I was better on social media, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, if I could quote things, if I could remember things better, if I could keep up with the times better, maybe I would have the right friends. If I could keep up with fashion trends, the latest things, whatever it is, maybe my friends would like me more. The issue is with the if only I were fill in the blank, better at whatever, more whatever. The problem with that is that we're not actually asking when will what I'm doing be enough? We're not actually focused on the actions or the behavior as much as we're just focused on me, right? Because we're not really asking when will what I'm doing be enough. We're really asking when will I be enough for my friends, my coaches, my parents, my directors, my teachers, myself. And we're asking, when will I be enough? The next question to ask is, who are we asking? Who are we asking the question, when will I be enough? Because I believe there's only one person who can truly decide if you're enough. And that's you. I believe you, high school student, are the only person that can decide if you are truly enough. No one else can choose how you see yourself or what you believe about yourself, because no one else can control the decisions you make right here in your mind. God has given you a beautiful, strong, powerful, wonderful mind that directs the trajectory of your life, the friendships you have, the actions you take, the things you're involved in. And only you can choose how you see yourself. And only you can truly decide if you're enough or not. Because whenever you're saying, if only I were these things, you're not really saying, if I were better at these things, maybe this person would like me. You're really asking, what do I have to do to be enough? And if you're asking that question, you're really asking it, most importantly, to yourself. If you don't think so, think a little bit harder. Because if that's true, which it is, then we have to change the way we are thinking, because this way clearly isn't working. Why do I say that? Because whenever we think in such a mindset of the way we live our life in comparison to how others are living their lives, in comparison to if only I were these things, these people would like me, in this system of I have to measure up to be likable, to be enough. What has it produced in our teenage culture? You guys know it exists in your schools, in your communities, your neighborhoods, amongst your peers. Suicide rates amongst teenagers are higher than they've ever been. Right? Depression and anxiety is an issue amongst teenagers in high school specifically, more than it ever has been. And maybe it's not the sole factor, but it certainly is a contributing factor. This system of living that tells us that we need to base our value, our enoughness, if you will, on our successes and failures in light of how others are living their life and what others expect of us specifically, and how we see ourselves and how we're measuring up to others. There's a different system of living. And we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, but there's one passage that the Apostle Paul writes. The Apostle Paul is this incredible figure in Christianity. He wrote 2/3 New Testament. Jesus showed up in his life. He was a murderer of Christians. God changed him, became a missionary for Jesus to the whole world. Went on 3 incredible missionary journeys, and one, he dedicated his life to getting to Rome. And he wrote a letter to the Christians in Rome. There's a few churches there, and he wrote them a letter. And in that letter, he wrote about these incredible truths about God and how we should live in light of these truths. And in chapter 12 of Romans, we find him encouraging us, urging us to live a certain way, according to a certain system, what I believe to be a kingdom system, the kingdom of God's system. This is the way we're encouraged to live. I'm just going to read 2 verses of it. You can read the whole chapter later. I encourage you to do so. But in chapter 12, verse 2, here's what Paul says. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove that what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. Listen, in this verse, God's saying, don't think like the world thinks. Think like God thinks. Don't be conformed to the pattern of this world. You know, there's this phrase we use called the zeitgeist, right? The zeitgeist is this current, the most current feeling and way of thinking in the culture, right, that we exist in. In America, there is this zeitgeist that it really is like this, of how do you measure up in your Snapchat feeds, and in your TikTok awareness, in your wokeness, in your fashion ability, right, in your successes in the athletic arena or in the arts arena, the academic field, and then even you put things on yourself like in your family, right, in comparison to your siblings. And Paul is reminding the Christians in Rome, is reminding us that this is a flawed system. Don't live that way. We talked about why and the fruits of why that's a flawed system, so we don't have to belabor that any longer. But what we can know is that God's telling us that there's a different way of thinking, a different way of living, a brand new system that we can live our life according to. But it's going to take a transformation. That's what he says in verse 2. He says it's going to take a transformation on the inside. It's going to take you asking God to change the way that you're living, the way that you're thinking, most importantly, the way that you see yourself. Because here's what's important. He wants you to see yourself the way that he sees you. And if you can begin doing that, then you can begin living according to the system he designed, this kingdom system. And if you can begin living that way, then you are going to be completely transformed. This is beautiful word in the Greek for metamorphosis, which actually talks about, we talk a lot about in Christianity, the inner change, right? But this word specifically is talking about the outer change. In other words, if you can ask God to change your mind, to change the way you think, to change the system you live your life according to, the way you see yourself, you can change that. If you can ask him to do that and you allow him to do that, you submit to that, not only are you going to be changed inside here, but it's going to be evident in the way that you live your life. It's going to show. Listen, it's hard to like yourself when you think like the world thinks. And why is that? Well, let me show you really quickly, okay? Let me show you why it's hard to like yourself when you think the way the world thinks. Okay, right here I've got some glasses, a pitcher, and this looks like Kool-Aid. It's just water with blue food coloring, okay? Now, listen, this is the system of the world, all right? Let's talk about grades, okay? We said, if only I were this, I would maybe be enough for this person to like me. So let's talk about grades. Grades could involve your parents, your teachers, maybe sometimes your friends, specifically your parents and teachers, right? If only I had aced that test, maybe I would be enough. And this blue line just kind of represents, this blue line kind of represents the enough line that you set, right? We become convinced that other people set it, teachers, parents, friends, the world sets it, but really we set it. We set it. We set what the enough line is for us, and we say, if I get let me open up my picture here. if I get the right grades on the test coming up, maybe I'll be enough. And we already think like okay, we're a little bit enough already because we're pretty smart. We do all right. We're in the right class. We keep up. We do our homework. So we're thinking, okay, well, maybe we're enough. And so if we're just enough, people, my teacher, my parents will like me, approve of me, and so I'll be okay, right? But then even when we reach that line, we think, well, but there's more that I could do. They could like me more. There could be like superstardom. So I could go over that line and be better. But that's not where it ends, right? This system tells us that if we were to accomplish enough, then people would like us, right? If we're just to do enough. What about extracurriculars, right? Theater and basketball, football, baseball, swimming, musicals, whatever it might be, dance teams. You know, we think that if we show up to enough practices, if we hustle enough in practice, if we score the right goals, hit the right moves, say the right things, act the right way, then we're going to be enough. If we're skilled and talented enough, we're going to be enough for our theater director, our coaches, our friends even to like us. And if we, not only that, but if we don't just do our job in the game, but we score 25 points or we get the most valuable player, then we're going to reach that superstardom amount. And that just keeps going. If we do enough, not only will people like us, but they will love us. And then what about this? We don't often think about this, but what about if this cup represents our Christianity? Right? Because this, if I were only fill in the blank, people would like me more, doesn't only reach these parts of our life, but also don't be fooled to think it doesn't reach your Christianity, because a lot of us think that way. In relation to God, we say, if I show up to church each week, if I read my Bible, if I pray, if I serve enough in the children's ministry or with Lucky Lou or downtown, or if I say enough of the right things, if I'm kind enough, if I bring enough apples to my teacher, if I watch enough Christian shows and listen to enough Christian music, then I'll be enough for who? For God. You know, we begin thinking that our life is only enough based on the successes and failures of the things we try to accomplish. That's the world system. Why is that flawed? Why doesn't that work? Right? Because the world wants you to focus on the negatives. We think that the liquid is our accomplishments, what we do or don't do, but actually in reality the liquid's us. Are we enough? In our extracurriculars, are we enough? In our classrooms, are we enough? In our faith? The world wants us to focus on our negatives, wants us to focus on our shortcomings, where maybe we're not enough, right? Where we don't measure up. And what does that do? That makes us like us less. The world system also wants us to focus on the shortcomings of others, because that makes us feel better. But what's that do? That makes us like others less. Listen, the world wants you to believe that success and great performance inevitably leads to being liked and accepted. But the issue is, we'll never be enough for them or ourselves in that system, because the reality is, it looks like this cup has a brim, but it doesn't. Because when we reach the top of that cup, we just get a bigger one, and a bigger one, and a bigger one. And we tell ourselves, and we feel like the world tells ourselves that there's more to accomplish. There's more. And there are people that have reached the top and realize, okay, the world still demands more of me, and there's nothing here. Because there's no ceiling. There's no win in that system, in that situation, in that scenario. The most important thing for you to hear in this conversation is that you are enough for God. You're enough for God. That's a completely different system than this. That's a completely different system. God doesn't put a line on you and say that you have to fill up this much, you have to do this much, you have to accomplish this much, and when you fail, some of it gets emptied out to measure up to what He wants for you and from you and how He sees you. God's system is completely opposite, different, new from the world. And that's what Paul's talking about here in Romans 12. Only you can choose to submit to that new way of seeing yourself, though. That new way of thinking. Only you can decide to believe that God sees you completely differently than the world sees you. and that he measures you completely differently than the world measures you. In God's design, not only are you enough, but you have indispensable value. Read verse 6 of chapter 12. He says, since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, each of us is to exercise them accordingly, a prophecy according to the proportion of his faith. Eugene Peterson wrote a version of this passage where he says, listen, don't waste your time comparing yourself to each other. Instead, be who God has created you to be. And I think that's so beautifully written, because what he's reminding us of is, listen, the world says, focus on what you're not. And when we focus on what we're not, we like ourselves a lot less. God says, focus on who you are. Focus on who you are. And you're going to like yourself a whole lot more, because I say who you are. I say who you are. In God's system, there's no one who can do what you do the way that you can do it. There's no one. God created you uniquely, perfectly, crafted you for, yes, those works are prepared beforehand. And he says in this chapter that you're a part of this beautiful body, this beautiful system, this beautiful kingdom. And without you, this kingdom would be less. That's having a kingdom mindset. In God's system, in the kingdom, you need to work hard. Yes. That's not different. You need to work hard. But here's what's wildly different and brand new. Your value doesn't change based on how you succeed in that work or how you fail in that work. Your value is stamped, sealed, and delivered. It will never change. It will never change based on your successes or failures, or even based on your physical appearance. It doesn't change. Your value is put on you by God, period. This is a better way of living, guys. This is the way we need to live. I guarantee that if I was living like that, if I saw myself the way that God sees me back in high school, Kendra would have liked me, because I would have had so much more confidence. I wouldn't have been so insecure. Listen, it's not easy to live this way, but it's beautiful and better to live this way. So how can we begin living this way? Just ask God. Ask God to help you. Ask God to help you change the way that you see yourself. Ask God to transform you from the inside out in your mindset and the way that you're thinking, that you might begin living according to his system. Because God likes you. God likes you. So you start liking you. Okay? All right, you guys have a great small group on Zoom. Hopefully you got the link for that. If not, message me and I will get that to you.